Would you take the gold if worrying was an Olympic sport? I probably would have in the past because worry was my middle name. I was so afraid that history would repeat itself that I just worried about everything and anything that could go wrong. And it was it was just the only thing that my brain could do was to worry. And so this was partly learned because my grandmother is a perpetual worrier. Every time she sends us a birthday card, a Valentine's Day card, she sends Halloween cards too. She always signs them with stay safe because she's always worried that something's going to happen to us when we are out and about, and especially me by myself or me with my girls. And she doesn't realize that she doesn't have to worry about things because life isn't as dangerous as we think it is, even though we see lots of crazy things in the news that would give us the impression that life is really dangerous. Also, though, she grew up in a traumatic household. Her father was an alcoholic, and I think her mom might have had a little bit of a drinking problem too. So she grew up with this perpetual feeling of being unsafe. And then she carried that with her, expecting that life would always be unsafe. And so she then passed that on to my dad, because my dad can be very much a worrywart as well, mostly with me, less so with my brothers. I don't know if I do know it's the difference between a girl thing and a boy thing. But so then it was passed down to me, and it was a pattern that I started to run. And in all fairness, there were things that happened to make me feel like I had to worry. My mom has a history of sexual abuse in her family and from being in the foster care system. And so it did not happen to me in my childhood, but because it happened to her, I always had this fear that it would happen to my girls too. And to keep them safe, I really was very guarded with who I would let them spend the night with and be around if I wasn't around, because I did not want to have anything traumatic or allow them to have any adverse experience that might cause them to grow up to need therapy and be neurotic like me. So, like I was before I really started doing healing work. And so I really did everything I could to keep them as safe as possible, almost like putting them in a little plastic bubble. But also, too, I had this narrative from my dad about life being unsafe. I had experiences of life being unsafe with an abusive boyfriend from high school. And also, when I was little, I was almost kidnapped twice, which is probably not something most people can say. But the first time was on the school playground. I was far away from the teacher, kind of off in the corner of the playground by myself, and this car rolled up with this man and this woman, and it was a black car. I can still see it as crystal clear now, and that was when I was in kindergarten. And they said that they couldn't find the principal's office and their daughter was new to school, and they offered me candy to get into their car. And I just ran to the teacher, and she dismissed me and said, oh, it was nothing, it was no big deal, and didn't even really look in the direction that I had just come from. And the other time was in my own front yard. So my mom lived on a road that was kind of in a busy road. We had a not great apartment complex diagonal from us. And I was in the front yard playing Barbies, and this older gentleman pulled up in a green car. I can still also see this as clear as day, and asked me to show him where the post office was. And I went inside and got my stepdad, and my stepdad gave him directions. And I knew about stranger danger because my grandmother would practice with me calling 911, going over variety of scenarios. So whenever she would have me, if my dad was working late, we would always play 911. And she would say, when you call 911, if I fall down, what do you say? And she would hold her phone over the button so that I couldn't actually dial, but she would make me push 911. What happens if someone comes up to you? What happens if, what happens if, what happens if? So I was almost groomed and conditioned to be a constant worrier that something inevitably bad would happen. And so this narrative of being kidnapped or abducted came back into play when I was training for a 5K 10 years ago. Before I had started doing healing work, I would not run on the road outside of my neighborhood because I was like, oh, there aren't enough houses around. If something happens, no one will hear me scream. So I would only run in my neighborhood. And the one time that I did chance it and run on this road outside of the neighborhood, there was this strange looking utility truck that drove by, and then they turned around. And of course, the crazy story started going a million miles an hour in my brain about the fact that they were turning around to come abduct me. And so I hightailed it home as fast as I possibly could. But when we're living in survival mode and we have this survival instinct constantly going, it's because of something from our past. It's this pattern that we're repeating. And it's that we're repeating the pattern of fearing that history is going to repeat itself. And that leads us to just have this constant worry. And we do that because it keeps us safe from being able to prepare ourselves for what could happen. So we won't be blindsided. We won't have this feeling of uncertainty because we will be prepared. We will not let something bad happen again. And so while it might feel like a gift in the moment, it's stressful because it's having you for use forward thinking about something that hasn't even happened, that might not happen, that you have no evidence is going to happen. And so we really have to step out of this constant state of worry and trust that this is not then. So whatever bad things happened in our childhood, it's not guaranteed it's going to happen again. We're in a different place now. So we're adults. We have more control and more power now to protect ourselves, to move through a situation than we did when we were little. And so we don't need to be in this heightened state, having all of these stress hormones in constant production. It's not healthy. It's exhausting. And so also too, when you're in this constant state of being a worrywart, it's not allowing you to be present in this moment. You're not really enjoying this moment. You're not really enjoying your time with the people who matter most to you, or you're really not just enjoying yourself because you're so worried about something that's not even real yet, or might not ever be real. So it's super important to just put the worry wart on the back burner and just trust that you actually can take care of yourself if you need to. We don't have to fear the unknown because we are able to move through it. And so if you're in that constant state of worry, I challenge you to look at what's triggering you to be worried. Is it that there is something that's happening that reminds you of the past? Is there something, are you with someone and their behavior reminds you of something of the past? If so, give yourself a little mental checklist of what you need to do in this moment to let go of that worry. It could be just telling yourself mentally, I'm safe. I am capable of taking care of myself. I'm not relying on someone else to take care of me, so everything is going to be just fine. It could be something so simple like that. So thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope that you'll check out some other videos, especially if you're new in this healing journey and you're looking for guidance and support. My goal is for this channel to be your one-stop shop. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video.